Okay, guys, it says that we are live. Y'all know the drill. If we are, somebody give me a yes. Okay, I think it started over. It says we're live. Y'all know the drill. If you can hear me, see me, very good. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Dr. Price. All right. So what I wanted to talk about tonight, first off, let me start by saying I'm a little brain dead, fried right now, just because I've spent most of the day today with Derek. You know, those of y'all who are in Magnum Opus know Derek, the guy who teaches the classes with me. For those of you who aren't there and don't know who I'm talking about, in Magnum Opus, I have a co-teacher because I wanted someone, number one, that I've learned a lot from in my life and on my path, as well as someone that I thought would, bring a lot to the table to do the classes with me, not just me talking all the time. So that's who I've been with most of the day today. And we've been having like a pretty heavy discussion that went on for a few hours about something that's tied into what I want to talk about tonight. But the reason I bring that up about just kind of being fried a little bit is because a lot of times I have these ideas when I want to talk about things with y'all. I'll, title the live stream, whatever it is, and I come on here thinking, okay, I'm going to get right to this and I'm going to explain this and this is going to be great and everybody's going to like this. And I'll walk away from it like feeling like I didn't articulate anything that I actually wanted to be able to articulate. That went over like a lead balloon. That was crap. I don't feel like I was able to do what I wanted to do. Hopefully that will not be the case tonight, because what I wanted to talk about, the reason I titled this Other Worlds, what we were talking about today is things that are literal versus things that are metaphors. And your understanding of things pertaining to magic and pertaining to alchemy should change as you go through this path. Like the things, like you should come to clearer understandings of things, and things that might not have made sense at one time should snap into focus. And your understanding of what certain things mean should also change. As you grow, so should your understanding of things. If you still like believe the same things today that you did 5 years ago, what that probably means is that you haven't grown a great deal in that period of time. The things I wanted to talk about tonight and what I wanted to try to describe are things that, and also I wanted to reiterate something I said a couple of days ago about how I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm not trying to convert anyone into believing what I believe or trading one dogma for another dogma or any of that kind of stuff. Like whenever I talk about this stuff, I'm basically just describing to you, having a conversation with you, what my firsthand experiences with aspects of this work have been, and hope that maybe it clears things up for you a little bit or helps give you the next step you need, to further your progress on this path or any of that. I'm not trying to tell anyone what you should or shouldn't believe. The reason I'm bringing that up again is because I don't understand magic now in the same way that I understood magic 5 years ago. My understanding of everything about this path has gradually grown and changed and morphed over time. And this also ties into something we were talking about the other day about the stages of alchemy. I think we were doing that at a higher pledge level. I don't know if everybody on this level heard it or not, but we were talking about the stages of alchemy and how they're depicted in these old illustrations. And this kind of ties into this theme also. So I'm trying to figure out where to jump in here, where to start. What I mean by other worlds how this ties into the different stages of alchemy. So the first stage of alchemy we talked about was the Negrado stage, which is what they call the blackening. And you see it illustrated in all different kinds of artwork, as it's either usually going to be the color black or anything to do with skeletons, grim reapers, death, any of that kind of stuff. All of those in those old alchemical engravings, anytime you see stuff like that, it represents this stage of the alchemical process, the blackening stage, the Negrado stage. And you can even see at the top of it, it says putrefactio, which is Latin for putrefaction, or to putrefy, which is what happens when something dies. Well, how this ties into other worlds. Most people in the world, let me just say that when you start this work, after you advance on this path a little bit, you will not live in the same world as most people. This is kind of a literal thing and a metaphorical thing. A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But a lot of these things don't mean what people think they mean when we're talking about other worlds and how you won't live in the same world. People have this idea that it means something, you know, like a hardcore concrete little thing, like say The Matrix or one of those Stargate movies or something where you go into a literal other world. It's more of, you know, I can remember vaguely when I was very young, say when I was like 15 or, yeah, Viticus says, is this kind of like when people say others are NPCs? Yes, it's tied into that also. Because the thing is, we all start as NPCs. All of us begin this path. All of us begin this journey as NPCs. Me, you, everyone. At one point in our spiritual development, we are all NPCs. What I mean by that is we walk around, you know, like that quote, that famous quote by Graham Hancock about how humanity is a species with amnesia. We don't remember where we came from, where we're supposed to be going, or how we're supposed to get there. Yes, Bakener says spiritually dead. Yes, and we're going to get back to that in just a minute. That's part of what I wanted to talk about. But Graham Hancock said this thing about how humanity is a species with amnesia. We don't remember where we're supposed to be going. We don't remember where we came from, and we don't remember how to get there. That we've lost this information. That's what I mean by an NPC. An NPC is someone who still lives in that state of existence. That's how I was when I was, and different people will, some people will never come out of it. Not in this lifetime, at least. Other people will come out of it at different times and for different reasons. When I was about 15 or 16 years old, I came to the conclusion, in my great wisdom as a teenager, that all of spirituality was bullshit. I didn't believe in anything. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in angels. I didn't believe in devils. I didn't believe in ghosts, fairies, anything. I thought it was all wishful thinking by most people. You know, for whatever reason, maybe they're scared to die and they want to believe in this stuff because it comforts them in some way, like having a security blanket, or, you know, maybe they're just delusional or whatever it is. But I had seen nothing in my time on Earth to indicate to me that there was, in actuality, anything beyond the material, physical level of existence. I hoped that I was wrong. I hoped there was. but I didn't have any faith that was the case. I wasn't holding my breath on it. People who live in that level of reality, that state of consciousness, those are the people who still wander around and say things like, I wonder if there's a God or not. I wonder if there's anything after death. What happens whenever what happens when you die? Is it just nothing? Or do you go to heaven? Or is there reincarnation? Or what's up with aliens? What's up with ghosts? People who wonder stuff like that, like on an intellectual level, but it doesn't really change their life in any way. It doesn't have any impact on their physical life. They still get up, go to work, take the kids to school, come home and watch TV, whatever. They don't have any kind of practice, or they're not working towards anything or following a path or anything else. And that's how we all start this path. Maybe you did believe there was something, even though you aren't doing anything. Maybe you did believe there was a God. Maybe you did believe you were going to go to heaven whenever you died, whatever. But usually what happens, like to use Joseph Campbell's metaphor of a hero's journey, in some way or another, you get a call. Something that calls you to start a journey. And by journey, I'm talking about this path that we're all on, this path of magic, this path of alchemy, this path of striving to complete the great work. We don't understand it in the beginning, but we at least start taking steps to try to understand it. Now, usually this call, most of the time, is going to be something very unpleasant. Most of the time when people start this journey, it's going to be because they hit rock bottom in some way. See, Big Nurse says, I got my neck broke literally and my journey started. See, stuff like that. That's what I mean. It's going to be, and it can be all over the map. It could be something like that, like having a broken neck. For me, it was going to death row and having nothing to lose except, Sarah says, I lost my brother. It's always going to be something unpleasant. Because for most of us, we would never start unless we were in a place where we didn't want to stay. We have to be in a place that's painful. And it's that pain that motivates us to begin. We hurt so bad that anything is better than just staying in that state and hurting anymore. And we're willing to do anything to try to move forward, even try to do magic. As stupid as that, we've always thought that might have sounded our whole life. We reach a point where we're like, I'll give it a shot. I'll try anything at this point. That's heeding the call. We get this call. Some people won't heed the call. Some people will settle into despair, anguish, whatever horrendous state that comes from choosing to live in a world that's familiar to them versus stepping outside of that world, stepping outside of that comfort zone of things they've known. But If you choose to heed the call, then the old you has to die. The old you has to go through the blackening, has to go through Negrado. And this is the first step of initiation. Basically, Negrado, Albdo, and Rubo, the blackening, the whitening, and the red, these represent the stages of initiation. What are we doing in initiation? Like even in baptism, when they put somebody under the water and bring them up. In initiation, it represents the death of the old, and then you're reborn into a new world. And this isn't like a one day thing, like it happens in one day. This kind of stuff is organic. Like it's going to happen over a period of time. Those things, those initiation rituals, whether it's in an order or whether it's baptism or whatever it is, those are symbols of the process. But the actual process is usually going to take time. The old you is not just going to be gone in one day. It's going to organically putrefy over time, maybe weeks, maybe months, maybe years. It's going to vary from person to person. But the next part of the process is Albdo. And Albdo is called the whitening. When it's the whitening, when we're in the whitening stage, Chris Waddell says, what if we're afraid to lose our old self? Then if that's not heeding the call. That's what it means when you're scared to step outside your comfort zone, when you're scared to move into a new life. You choose to turn your back on growth and development and finding something new. And you choose to stay behind and stagnate. That's your only two choices in life. Your two choices are evolve and move forward or stagnate. There's no in between. We do one of those two things. But in the whitening, what that symbolizes is being on a spiritual journey. And what I mean by a spiritual journey is doing something. I don't mean believing in something, hoping something is true. I don't even mean stuff like going to church. I mean, you're doing the work. By doing the work, what I mean is you are doing some kind of ritual that allows you to consume divine substance. You are feeding your soul, and you're feeding your soul with chi, with real energy, with what the Sumerians called melem. It's what you're doing every time you do these rituals in magic, these pentagram and hexagram rituals. It's what you're doing in alchemy. Like you are consuming divine light, which will whiten your energy body, which is gradually like putting a little bit of light in your energy body, putting a little bit of chi in your energy body each time you do this practice. And over time, you grow brighter and brighter and brighter. You know, this is what, for example, like not just like the rainbow body or the diamond body of Tibetan Buddhism, but even like in Christianity, the old paintings from like the Renaissance of all the saints and Mary and Jesus and all that, they all had those halos of light shining around them. Some of them, it's just around the head. Others, it's around the whole body. They're like light shining around the whole body. That's what those are depicting. They're depicting this practice. Well, when you start doing this stuff, when you've been doing it long enough, and it's going to vary from person to person, depending on what you're doing, how much of it you're doing, all this kind of stuff, how fast you progress on this path, what's going to happen is you're going to change. The way you think is going to change. The way you act is going to change. The things you believe is going to change. By belief, what I mean is During this stage, most people will come to see the world in a completely different way. How? What do I mean by that? A completely different way. It means you went from the stage of previously, remember what I was talking about a while ago, where you don't really believe in anything, or maybe you hope something is true, but you don't have any indication that allows you to perceive that there's anything beyond the material world at all. You've never experienced anything beyond the material world. You live in the world of mediocrity. You live in the world of the mundane. And it is, to be quite honest, a hellish existence. Most people don't realize how hellish it is until they've left it behind and look back on it. Like most people that are in hell, a lot of them don't realize they're in hell. Most hungry ghosts do not know that they are hungry ghosts. The reason they call them hungry ghosts is because we have to feed on something. We consume all the time. We consume food physically. We consume stuff with our minds, whether you're reading books or whether you're scrolling TikTok or, movies that you're watching, music that you're listening to, things that you're thinking about. All of those things are you feeding your mind. Some people feed their mind absolute garbage and junk food, ultra processed crap. And some people feed their minds nutritious food. Well, just like when you start doing these practices, you're consuming divine sustenance, you're feeding your energy body. Other people are feeding their energy bodies in different ways with lesser, basically trash, garbage. What I mean by that is, think about people who are super needy, people who are desperate for attention. And it could be any kind of attention. It could be, like people who are, like, let's say, trying to get attention on social media through whatever various means they have of doing it. Or it could be people who in life are always stirring up drama of some sort, within their social circles or their family life or whatever, because it forces people to pay attention to them. Whatever it is. They're feeding on crap energy. They're feeding on the energy of other people. Other people's energy in the form of attention. When you want someone's attention, what you really want is their energy. Because that's what attention is. If you're paying attention to something, you're feeding it energy. Yeah, Nick says psychic vampires. Exactly. And they feed on, and I'm not saying that in like a derogatory way. I'm saying it as in we were all that. Just like I said, we all started this path as NPCs. Before we learn how to consume spiritual sustenance, we are all doing one of two things. We're either starving to death or we are psychic vampires of one kind or another. But after you start the process of consuming divine sustenance through whatever means you're doing it, through Taoism, ceremonial magic, through certain aspects of yoga. I don't mean the stuff most people do in yoga classes, which is just like a good workout, a good stretching session. I mean like the real yoga where you're using like the chakras for, energy circulation and stuff like that. Once you start this process, you live in an enchanted world. What I mean by an enchanted world, at first we're living in this world of this mundane world, this world of mediocrity, this world of not really having any indication that anything in the universe exists beyond the physical realm, beyond the material realm. When we live in an enchanted world, we live in a world where it is possible to see the face of God. It's possible to invoke angels. It's possible to do energy circulation practices. We live in a world full of these amazing things and experiences. That's the Albdo stage. And this is where I wanted to talk for a second about my own personal experiences and my own personal changes on this path. I don't live in that enchanted world anymore. This world of entities and intelligences and spirits and angels. I don't understand those things now in the way that I once did. I went from one point in my life of believing in nothing to the next point in my life of believing in all of these things. Not just believing in them, experiencing them. You know, I've talked many times about the first time I saw an angel, the first time I ever perceived one. It wasn't me just believing there was something there. I knew there was something there. I experienced something there. And just to stop right there for a second, people that are in those two states of existence do not live in the same world. They do not live in the same reality. One of those people lives in a reality where they don't know anything in existence beyond the material plane of Malkuth. The other person lives in a world filled with angels and miracles and divine names, all kinds of things that most of the world doesn't know about. But that's not the end of the path. That's only the second depiction in the alchemical stage, in the alchemical process. The baked nurse says, I miss that world, though. This one is harder. To quote Don Henley, don't look back. That's what he says in The Boys of Summer. Don't look back. You can never look back. We have to keep moving forward. So, what's the third stage of the process? The third stage started for me whenever I realized that what I was talking to and communicating with and seeing, receiving information from, when I thought it was God, when I was absolutely certain and positive it was God. God gives you an image and a name by which to invoke it. And you do that and you start having this whole amazing, amazing journey. You walk with God through your days. And then one day you get ready to invoke God, just like every other day you've been doing for at least a couple of years before. And all of a sudden something completely and absolutely different happens. And it's almost like you're looking at God, and then God merges with you and you realize that it was you the whole time. That it was never any external entity. even though it told you things you have no way of knowing and explained things to you, like it explained parts of the Bible to me and made me understand things like the precession of the equinoxes, things I had no way of knowing on my own. And then you realize, oh, somehow it really was me. And then you realize a lot of things were really you. Or things weren't exactly what you thought they were. Like the angels are really basically just thought forms that you're creating out of chi, out of energy. And the reason I started off talking about how I'm not trying to convince you of anything or convert you to anything or any of this kind of stuff is because not everyone is going to agree with me whenever I say what I'm going to say next. And that could be for a lot of different reasons. A lot of it sometimes is because some people haven't made it that far yet. Like there was a time in my life when if you would have told me these things are really you are not talking to anything outside of yourself. You're not interacting with anything outside of yourself. Yeah, Baker says the call is coming from inside the house. Yeah. There was a time when if someone told me that, I would have thought, you have no idea what you're talking about. I'm experiencing this. I'm having firsthand experience of this. How are you going to tell me that this isn't real? I'm not saying it isn't real. I'm just saying, like I said in a video a little while back, just because you had the experience doesn't mean you understand the experience. That takes a while longer. Think of it as almost, those little slide projectors that they used to show you slides on in elementary school, where they put all these little slides in it and there's a light and it projects an image on the wall, and it could be a map or whatever it is. They show you pictures projected on the wall when you're a little kid and you use it as a teaching aid. You know what I'm talking about? Believing that these things are real is just like believing that those images projected on the wall is real. I'm not telling you you're not seeing something. I'm not telling you you aren't having this experience of some kind. I'm not telling you there's not some process happening whenever you see that on the wall. But what I am telling you is just because someone is projecting an image of the Eiffel Tower on that wall doesn't mean that you're seeing the Eiffel Tower. Doesn't mean that you're at the Eiffel Tower. Eventually, what happens is you realize you are the projector. And whenever that happens, you no longer live in this enchanted world. Once again, you're in a world where there is no God, not in the sense that most people think of it. I'll get back to something else about that in just a minute, about what there is. But in the sense that most people think of, and in the sense that you once believed, there is no God in that sense. There are no angels as you once thought there were, like in the religious sense of the word. There are no fairies. There are no ghosts. There are no entities, all these things that people get hung up on. I'm not saying you didn't have an experience, just saying your experience isn't what you think it is. And I see Jacob says, bummer. That's the thing, it's not really. Because you don't go back to that other world. You can't go back. That's the reason we don't look back, is because you can't go back. Just like you can't go back to the world where you lived in this enchanted place where all the stuff was completely real, you also can't go back to the world before that where nothing was real. What happens is those two realities get married together to create something different from either one of them. The union of opposites. You know, you have one world where nothing exists except the material level of reality. And you have one enchanted world full of all these entities and intelligences and beings. And you marry those two worlds together and you come up with something different than either one of them. That's why in the Rubo stage, representing the Rubo stage in alchemy, you see a lot of marriage imageries. You know, the red king and the white queen, that sort of thing. The marriage of, you know, like even with the HGA, they talk about how, you know, it happens in different stages. First, there's like attaining the vision of the HGA. Then there's attaining knowledge and conversation of the HGA. Then there's the marriage of the HGA. The marriage of the HGA is when you merge with it and realize you and it are one thing. The three stages, I'm not sure what you're talking about, Michelle. The three stages are Negrado, Albdo, and Rubo. But I say there is no God, right? But that there is something. Well, what do I mean by that? I mean there's no God in the sense of the Old or New Testament God, the God of Judaism, the God of Islam, the God of Christianity. You will grow beyond it. Just like with astrology, you know, part of this process is breaking the chains which bind us to the stars. But what there is something closer to, in Chinese alchemy or Taoism, they talk about the Tao, the source. Think of it as almost like we are fish in an aquarium, and God, or the source, the Tao, is the water in the aquarium. Most fish have no idea that water exists. They live in it. They breathe it in. They cannot exist outside of it. But they have no idea that such a thing as water exists. This is how most people are with the Tao, with the quantum field. That's another name they call it. So one of the things that Derek and I were talking about today was miracles. And Derek is at a stage in his life where he still very much believes in miracles. You know, he's a priest in the Orthodox Church. He believes, for example, that there was a literal Jesus, just like in the story. And that this man could do things like, you know, literally do the miracles described in the Bible, some, you know, things like walking on water. And he's convinced still that like we can reach a certain stage where it's possible for us to do those things. And I don't believe that at all. That's what I mean. I'm not trying to convert anybody or convince anybody, and I'm not saying that you'll ever believe what I'm telling you right now, that it may never be a true thing for you. I'm just telling you about my experiences and kind of how they differ from other people's experiences. And my experiences have been that there is no such thing as a human being that can walk on water. It defies the laws of physics. And to me, that's what a miracle would be. A miracle would be something that defies, that goes against the physical laws of the universe. That's the only thing that I would describe as a miracle. So in our conversation today, we started talking about, like he would ask me, well, how do you explain this then? Or how do you explain that then? And I'll give you a couple of examples because, basically what we were talking about is the crystallization of the aura, creating this vehicle, this diamond body, as they call it in Buddhism, or this rainbow body, or this solar body, or whatever name you want to put on it, that houses consciousness after the death of the physical body. To me, that is not a miracle. It may be something that most people in this world do not understand yet. Science doesn't understand it yet. But there are other things, that science has no clue about yet, but doesn't mean that it's not, that there aren't perfectly reasonable explanations for it. For example, healing. Like we got into the conversation about healing. And he said, well, I've seen people do things before. And I said, like what? What have you seen with your own eyes someone do? And he said, I've seen, for example, the bishop at my church, like literally heal someone. And I said, well, I've seen that exact same thing. Not only have I seen it, I have experienced it. I have done it. I have done it to myself. I have used energy healing on myself, and I have done it on other people. I don't consider it miraculous at all. It's not a miracle. It's not defying, any physical law of the universe. It's just using things that most people don't understand how it works. It's using parts of ourself that most people don't even realize we have. But I don't consider that a miracle. And then we started talking about like different, well, what about, for example, say, for example, someone like the alchemist Falconelli, and how people say that they saw Falconelli like dissipate and they saw him form again in a room. Do I believe stuff like that? And the answer is absolutely no, I don't. No human being, no physical human being just that's not a thing that happens. Like, have you ever seen it happen? And from there, we were talking about like other examples of things that some people would call miraculous. For example, the Shaolin monks, the Shaolin temple in China. And what I said to him, the way I tried to describe it, is that I've seen some of these men do things that seem miraculous in a sense on the surface, but that aren't really miraculous at all when you understand them. Like, I'll give you an example, and you can look up videos of this. They do it on stage. They've done it, in front of millions of people watching. They work on different parts of their body and make certain parts of their body kind of invulnerable. Like, I'll give you an example. There's one called the iron throat technique, where you'll see one monk have a spear and put it to the other monk's throat, and the monk with the spear to his throat will start walking forward and pushing the spear with his throat, like pushing the other monk back on the floor using just his throat, and the spear doesn't stab through his throat like it would with most people. That's the thing. There's also what they call this sounds crazy, but this is a thing, the iron crotch technique. What that usually looks like is you'll see one of these guys like stand in horse position, and someone else will come up and just start wailing on him, just start kicking him as hard as they can, right in the crotch, in ways that would be absolutely physically devastating to the average human being. And it doesn't affect him at all. These are physical techniques that require a great deal of practice and discipline to do. Like, it is possible to develop these, it takes years. It takes these people many, many years of practice and dedication and discipline and commitment to these techniques in order to be able to do this. It's not something that just happens miraculous one day. It's something that they have to deliberately and consciously set out to develop. The thing is, anyone can do it. It's not a miracle. Anybody, if you are determined enough, committed enough, disciplined enough, you could do it with enough practice. You could develop the iron throat. You could develop the iron crotch. You could develop, there's another one they call it the iron shirt, where you're kind of doing the same thing with your torso. And usually, what that looks like is they'll stand there and they'll have people just hitting them like as hard as they can, like in the stomach, chest, whatever, and it doesn't faze them. That's not a miracle, it's just practice. Something that takes a lot of time and ability to build up. Just like developing the diamond body, developing the solar body, developing the philosopher's stone, whatever you want to call it, the energetic vehicle that houses consciousness after the death of the physical body. It's not miraculous. You're already doing some of the techniques that lead to this. Like, when you start off doing the lesser banishing and the lesser invoking ritual, the pentagram, like Swat Crowley called the lesser pentagram ritual the philosopher's stone of ceremonial magic, the base upon which all of this is built. You're taking in that divine, all it is you are taking in tremendous amounts of this chi, this quantum field around us. You're taking it in. You're taking in massive amounts of it, taking it in the form of angels. You're taking it in the form of these pentagrams that you're charging with divine names. That's why every time you do it, like, you inhale and fill the earth with light and then draw the star. And then you inhale and fill the earth with light and charge the star. And then you inhale and fill the earth with light and draw this pentagram. Well, what you're basically doing, you're not even actually doing that in the room where you are. You are tattooing your aura. You are tattooing these symbols and putting all of this energy into your energy body. And what happens over time is you're putting more and more and more and more of it in there. The goal is to get so much of it in there that it begins the crystallization process. And that energy body does not disintegrate after the death of the physical body. Thing is, it takes a lot of energy to do that. And different techniques, different practices, and different paths all have different aims when it comes to what they're trying to do. You know, like for example, some of these practices, like say some of the Buddhist practices aren't about, like the Tibetan, Dzogchen practices are about creating the rainbow body. But there are other Buddhist practices that are not concerned with that and that are not focused on that. As a matter of fact, their focus is like what the Buddha called nirvana, which means snuffed out. Meaning that you, this consciousness that you are trying to house in this energy body to, outlive, to basically be immortal. In one aspect of Buddhist practice, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to take this individual consciousness and make it immortal. Whereas in the other practices, you're trying to take it and snuff it out so that it's just merged back with the quantum field around us. And the you that you are now ceases to exist forever. So all of these practices aren't geared towards the same thing. And when you start down this path, it is very important to know stuff like this so that you can figure out exactly what are you wanting to do. Are you wanting to just dissolve and be one with God? One with the quantum field, one with the fish tank? Or do you want to create an energy body, a Merkaba, that houses your individual consciousness so that it doesn't disintegrate? It's up to you, I'm not saying one's right and one's wrong, one's good and one's bad. To each their own. I used to be very concerned with immortality. Once upon a time. Now, not really, to be honest. I know it's possible to do it because I got well into the process of doing it. But something happened to me after 2020. And I started to look around at the world. And to be honest, a lot of times now, I'll look around at the world, and don't get me wrong, I think the world is absolutely beautiful. I am more in love with the beauty of the world now. I sit out sometimes on my back porch and just look out at the grass and the trees, and I think, my God, I can't believe how beautiful it is. But at the same time, I look at other aspects of the world and I think, I am profoundly grateful that I will not be here to see where this is all going in 200 or 300 years. Sometimes, as stupid as it sounds, it's weird little things that make me feel that way. For example, I was talking the other day about how 90% of the music that I listen to is Bruce Springsteen. It's the only thing that really speaks to me. I haven't really listened to anything but Bruce Springsteen in years now, to the point that people around me have started to hate it, gotten sick of it. But Bruce Springsteen has been around my whole life. He started putting out albums in the 70s when I was born. He put out albums in the 80s when I was growing up. He put out albums in the 90s when I was an adult. Exactly. Baby Nurse says he's getting old. Exactly. And sometimes I think about a world. I know this sounds maybe ridiculous to some people, but I think about a world without Bruce Springsteen in it. And that is a much emptier world to me. Do I really want to be around in 300, 400 years? Who knows what the hell people will be listening to? To me, I am no more interested in attaining immortality than I am in developing an iron crotch. Both of them are neat little tricks. There's nothing supernatural about either one of them. Both of them are possible to do if you're really committed and dedicated and disciplined about doing the practices. But I'm not really interested in either one of them anymore. But my point before I started rambling is other worlds. Azale says, I'd rather just be the kind of person nobody kicks in the crotch, I think. There you go. Me too. But my point about other worlds is all of these different stages as you progress through them, Negrado, Albdo, Rubo, a world that's strictly materialistic, a world that is enchanted, and the third world that's a marriage of both. Once you go through each of, or go into each of those worlds, not even go all the way through them, but once you go into those, you will never, well, first off, you will not be able to relate in some ways to people who are in the previous worlds. Like when you are in an enchanted world where angels are real and God speaks to you, you won't be able to relate in any way to those people who can't believe or conceive that nothing but the material level of reality exists. Those people will live in a different world than you. You will live in a different world than them. A world that does not even have the same rules or laws, is not made up in the same way, that you don't interact with in the same way. And you can't ever go back to that world. It doesn't mean you're literally going to be like Stargate or the Matrix or something like that and live. I don't even know how to describe it. Because you will live in a different reality. You will not live in this. To one of these groups of people, reality is only the physical world. To another of these groups of people, all these entities and everything else are completely and absolutely real, and they live in a world where they interact with them. You see, I made a note for myself. I want to make sure that I covered everything I was wanting to cover tonight. Hold on one second. One more thing. This is where in the Bible, Jesus says, let the dead bury the dead. What does that mean? Once you move into the second stage, into the Albdo stage, and you live in an enchanted world, the people who are still in the pre-Negrado stage, who haven't got the calling yet, who haven't hit rock bottom yet, who are still walking around wondering if there's anything beyond the material plane that exists, that's what he means by the dead. Let the dead bury the dead. It's no longer your job to be concerned with that world. A lot of people have this kind of savior complex where they think, I want to wake those people up. And I think this is something a lot of people go through whenever you start to learn. It's why I wrote those books on magic I wrote. Because I thought if people just knew this stuff, if people just started doing this stuff, it would change their lives. The thing is, those people are not going to start doing this stuff. Not until they hit that place where they get the calling. Not until they hit rock bottom. Exactly. Azelle says people don't want to wake up. Exactly. You cannot help anyone who doesn't want help. To them, you're just some crackpot talking about angels. They don't want to hear that crap. You're just they look at you as the same way that you would look at like a fundamentalist born again preacher, coming and talking about, if you don't believe what I tell you, you're going to go to hell. That's the same level that they would view you on. You can't wake anybody up. They have to be allowed to go about their lives, go about their existence, do whatever they're going to do until they arrive at the place in their journey where they think, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. But you can't make that day come for them. You're not their savior. And they don't want your help. You have to let those people do whatever those people are going to do. Let the dead bury the dead. Leave them to their world. You're not of their world anymore. Nick says there are those who want / or got help. Those who want help, if somebody comes to you, there's a difference in, the way I look at it now is, I don't promote those books that I put out. You don't ever see me anymore like posting about them on social media or trying to, convince people to buy them or any of that kind of stuff. It's because I figure they're out there, and if people want them, if people are looking for them, they'll find them. If someone wants to start this journey, they're going to find a way to start this journey. May not be through me, may not be through magic. It might be through yoga. It might be through Taoism. It might be through, a million other different paths. It might be through alchemy, whatever it is. Once they are ready for, Nick says AA. AA is another, well, I don't know which AA you're talking about, Alcoholics Anonymous or the Crowley organization or what, but AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous organization, yes, that is absolutely a way. You can try, Coulter. Coulter Harris says, sure, but you can always inspire the looking. You can try, but the thing is, to most people, you're just another person talking. They hear a million people talking, trying to convince them of stuff every day, and your voice is just another voice. And you're going to find, for the most part, you're wasting your time. And you're wasting your very, very precious energy that you could be using on whatever path it is that you've chosen, whether it's spiritual immortality, whether it's nirvana, whatever it is. Yeah, Ganica says this is a personal effort, not your place to interfere in someone's spiritual journey. Exactly. I mean, how do you, think about it. How do you look at it whenever you hear somebody knocking on your door one Saturday morning and you open it up and it's somebody saying, hi, I'm from the Jehovah's Witnesses, or I'm from the Mormon Church. Do you have a few minutes that I could give you some literature and talk to you about blah, blah, blah. You're like, oh, God, I don't want to hear this. Yeah, Dustin says, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling is what my pastor always said. Exactly. 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 Thing is, tonight, I didn't get to read all of them. I was deliberately averting my gaze. Like I saw a bunch of questions and stuff going by. Yeah, that's a good one too, Gannicus. Gannicus says also it's egotistical and shows where you are in your development. Exactly. It does. Like what does that mean? Like egotistical. Like, I don't mean that as an insult. I mean, like, what does it really mean? Well, what it really means is if you look at someone as needing your help, then on some level, you view yourself as being up here and them down here. They need your help because they're lower than you. They don't understand as much as you. They're, whatever it is, they're not on the same level as you in some way. So I have to reach down and help them. But what I was going to say is I saw a bunch of people asking a bunch of different things, and I didn't stop and answer anything tonight the way I usually do, just because I didn't want to get derailed. Because you see already, we've been on here over an hour, and it took me all this time to just kind of get to the point of what I was even wanting to talk about. And I knew if I stopped and started answering questions that were going off in all kinds of other directions, we would have never gotten to the end of this tonight. So whatever questions you were asking, write them down. Don't forget it. Don't just let this live stream go off and forget it, because I do want to talk about whatever y'all are curious about, whatever y'all are wanting to talk about, whatever. So write them down. Write them down. And the next stream that we do, like even if it's not related to the topic we're talking about, still we can bring them up and go back and touch on them. Hopefully get something that you find useful out of it. I wasn't just completely and absolutely ignoring people tonight. I just knew that if I stopped and got derailed, I was going to go all off in all kinds of other different directions. But my point again is, like I was talking about, like even Derek and I do not agree on everything. And I don't try to convince him of anything, and he doesn't try to convince me of anything. We're not, trying to convert each other or anything else. We both have different ways of seeing things, and to be honest, we enjoy the process of like puzzling through this stuff and having these kinds of conversations. We don't have to agree on everything in order to enjoy having these conversations. And it also forces each of us to like really think out and articulate what do we, like, why do I believe this? And are there holes in what I'm thinking? Flaws in this, and if so, what does that signify? Like, it's an enjoyable process. Exactly. Finding Destiny says iron sharpening iron. That's exactly what it is. Exactly. And Viticus says, I'm stuck at a crossroads and don't know where to go. And I saw you earlier saying some things like, this is where I get confused and all that sort of stuff. Practice. That's what it all comes down to. If you start practicing and you practice every single day, it's not going to happen all at one time. But if you start practicing, what happens over time through the years is your confusion will dissipate. It'll dissolve like mist. When I first started karate, for example, well, let me go back even before that. When I first started magic, I thought, I'm never going to understand this stuff. This is so far beyond my pay grade. I'm never going to get this. And then I look back on it now and I'm like, why did I ever think this stuff was so complicated? It's not complicated at all. When I first started karate, I thought, I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm never going to get this. Like doing these forms and all this kind of stuff. I cannot get this. This will never make sense. I am so lost. I don't even know where to start. And I look back on it now after doing it every single day. And I think, why did I think that was so complicated? Why did I think that was so confusing? I'm going through it again right now. Remember, I said I started taking Kung Fu. Kung Fu is completely and absolutely different from karate in a million different ways. And I feel a lot of times so lost in it and like it's so far beyond me and like I'm never going to get it. But I know I went through that same thing with magic. I went through that same thing with karate. I know that if I just keep doing this every single day, eventually something's going to snap into place and it's going to make sense to me. I'm going to understand its language. Same way with this. Just do the work every day. Do the work. Do the invocations. Do the practices. And on that note, I'm going to shut up because we're closing in on an hour and 15 minutes. I just wanted to say thank y'all for indulging me in this conversation, for listening to me. You know, a lot of times, like I was saying, and going back to the iron sharpening iron thing and how what it does is allow us to view like what we see from, or what we believe or what we feel now from all these different angles, like iron sharpening iron. Even having these conversations with y'all kind of does the same thing for me. You know, it forces me to articulate certain things and I understand them a little better. So thank y'all for that. And hopefully you got something out of this as well. I enjoyed myself and I hope y'all did too. All right. Love you guys. Have a good night and I'll talk to you in just a couple of days.